The bills that we are fighting run the gamut from attacks on transgender access to public spaces, to attacks on trans students, attacks on marriage equality, every kind of attack you can imagine. But through it all, our community comes back and fights again and again. Today, you are going to hear some of those stories. To lead us off, I thought it was important that we remind people that we have strong community leaders in government in Tennessee, and we're going to hear from 3 of them off the bat. So I'd like to start with the Honorable Olivia Hill, Council Member at Large, Metro Nashville. And then we'll hear from other members of the caucus.
Wow, I didn't know I was going first. Whew, pull together, Olivia. So my name is Olivia Hill, and I stand before you as the first trans person ever elected in the state of Tennessee. I'm a 4th-generation Nashvilleian, a U.S. Navy combat veteran, but I'm also a daughter, a mother, a grandmother, and a woman who refuses to be erased. Right now across the country there are forces that tirelessly silence and legislate us out of existence, to strip us away of our dignity and make us disappear. But let me be clear, we will not vanish. You can try to control where we go to the bathroom. You can try to legislate what we wear. You can attempt to legislate what is on our documentation, but you will never control the truth about who we are. Trans people are some of the strongest, most courageous, and resilient individuals I've ever come to know. Unlike many others in the LGBT community who at times have the privilege to hide, to have straight passing privilege. Our existence, however, is visible. Our identities are politicized. Our very right to live authentically is debated in the halls, and the power of the people who have never walked in our shoes. So sadly, so today I ask you to reach out and wear your pride on your sleeve, not just in the month of June, but every single day. And speak up when you hear injustice. Show the world that we are here, and because visibility is power, and silence has never won a fight. My name is Olivia Hill. Let's get to work.
Thank you, Council Member. And I want to introduce next, I believe, the Chair of the Caucus, Council Member Russ Bradford. Thank you, Council Member.
Good morning. I stand here with my colleagues, state leaders, deeply concerned about the extreme anti-LGBTQ legislation that is being proposed in this very building. These bills do not reflect the values of inclusion, fairness, and dignity that we strive to uphold in our city. Instead, they create fear, division, and real harm for our LGBT brothers and sisters and residents in our neighborhoods and our communities. But also, beyond the direct harm to these individuals, these measures also threaten our ability as Metro Council members to effectively govern our city. They undermine our local authority, local controlled states' rights. They restrict our ability to create safe and welcoming communities, and they damage our city's reputation as a place where people from all over, from all backgrounds, can thrive. At a time when we should be focused on economic growth, quality of life, public safety, we're instead being forced to push back against these unnecessary and harmful bills that are in fact overreach. Our job is to build a stronger, more united city, not one where members of our community live in fear of discrimination and exclusion. I urge my colleagues, people in this room, residents, and leaders from across Tennessee to stand against these attacks and reaffirm that our city and state remain a place of equality, opportunity, and respect for all. Thank you.
And finally, from the Metro Council's LGBTQ caucus, my longtime friend, Brenda Gadd, who is council member representing District 24.
I was going to say it's great to be here, but under these circumstances, it's not so great. But it's great to be able to stand alongside and in front of and beside each one of you today. So good morning. I do stand here today while fear is weaponized against our young people. Every person, especially our youth, deserve to live with dignity, respect, and safety. And I'll not be silent. Clearly, I'm in good company while those rights are under attack. Specifically, I want to speak to HB 64, Senate Bill 472. This bill is not about our safety. This bill is not about fairness. The bill is about fear. It's about control. It's about using government power to further marginalize transgender and non-binary youth. Some of the most vulnerable members of our community refuse to let that go unchallenged. Let's be clear. The consequences of these bills are not theoretical. They are not abstract. They are deadly. Laws targeting transgender individuals, any member of our LGBTQ community, lead to increased rates of mental health struggles and suicide. When transgender youth are forced into isolation and denied recognition, the risk of suicide attempts skyrocket by 72%. That's bathroom bans like the ones proposed in this legislature do not protect anyone. Instead, they put all youth, especially our trans girls, at even higher risk. They're higher risk of harassment and assault. These laws embolden bullies, encourage discrimination, and create a climate of fear, not just for trans students, but for all students. Because when we start policing identity, we start policing everyone. As a local government official, I've seen firsthand what happens when we choose inclusion over division. I've seen the strength of our community, our teachers, our counselors, and parents who work tirelessly to create spaces where every student can thrive. And just recently, we've seen students and parents and community members come together in order to address real threats in our schools, and those real threats being to protect us against gun violence. This bill spits in the face of that work. It would force schools, public and private, to abandon those values and comply with our rules. Many of these institutions, they operate strong parental involvement and clear educational missions. But this bill that's proposed in this legislative cycle strips them of their autonomy, forcing them to implement policies that fly in the face of best practices in education, medical guidance, and basic human decency. This is not small government. This is government overreach at its worst. Furthermore, this bill sets a dangerous precedent. It sends a message to our trans youth. It sends a message to all of our youth that they do not belong, that their identities are a problem, and those identities are to be legislated away. History has shown us time and time again, when government starts targeting one group for exclusions, others are never far behind. So let's be absolutely clear. Every student deserves a safe and accessible restroom, a place of study. Every student deserves respect. Every youth deserves to feel like they belong. If we truly care about protecting our young people and our community, we must reject policies rooted in discrimination and fear. We must fight for solutions that uplift and protect all students, no matter their gender identity. I urge our state lawmakers, my local government colleagues, my constituents, and every single person listening today to stand up, speak out, say no to fear-mongering, say no to government-sanctioned discrimination, say yes to fundamental rights of every person, every student, trans or cisgender, to be safe, respected, and valued in their schools and communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Please give our local government community members another hand. Thank you so much for being with us today. Our elected officials just spoke about the need to protect youth and students. And now we're going to hear from an organization, Wilco Iris, that serves those students but also gives those students an opportunity to be agents of change. So we are so glad to have Eve Boger with Wilco Iris, who will introduce her guest, and we look forward to hearing from them this morning.
Hi, I'm Eve Boger, Executive Director of Wilco Iris. Wilco Iris is a nonprofit organization based in Franklin, and our primary purpose is to support and empower queer and questioning students and their allies through student-led, adult-supported programming, education, outreach work, and social events, including our upcoming 4th annual alternative prom. We usually have 75 to 80 high schoolers attend. We have 12 student leaders representing almost every high school across Williamson County who shape our program, and we are opening our doors to middle school students this very month. We are here today to stand in opposition of the hateful legislation intended to erase queer, especially trans youth. We stand in the midst of this turbulent anti-diversity, anti-equity, anti-inclusive climate to serve as a reminder of the kind, welcoming, loving, and supportive LGBTQIA plus and allied community that exists in Williamson County. This includes parents, neighbors, teachers, counselors, students of all ages, businesses, clergy, coaches, librarians, and community partners like Franklin Pride and PFLAG Franklin. In fact, we are joyfully planning to host our Wilco Iris Teen Lounge at the upcoming 5th year of Franklin Pride. We keep watch as our own state legislators sit at their desks creating discriminatory and unjust bills intentionally worded to make queer and trans students' lives harder in a way that we cannot help but see as cruel. We see proposed bans against trans students simply having access to use the bathroom safely. We see trans athletes being blocked from participating in school sports. We see the basic right to be called your pronouns being revoked. We see the freedom to display pride flags in the classroom as a symbol to all students that bullying is not tolerated here being threatened. And we see books with queer representation being pulled from libraries. We see all this erasure happening under the guise of protecting the children when it is clearly meant to roll back the rights of specific students, namely queer and trans kids. It's harmful to our students and their families to watch their elected representatives disregard and deny their very existence over and over. All students should be able to thrive as their authentic selves at school and in their community. Enough is enough. We are here to say that despite this bullying and insensitive legislation happening in Tennessee, there is still a large part of Tennesseans, yes, even in Williamson County, who support inclusion and love and rights for queer and trans youth. To trans and non-binary youth specifically, I want you to hear me loudly that you are loved, you are seen, you are wonderful, and you are so worthy right here, right now, exactly as you are. Know that you are never alone. There are so many groups like Wilco Iris who are fighting for you even when you can't be in the room, and there is so much joy to be found in our growing community. Together, we are stronger, we aren't going anywhere, and no matter what, we are going to continue to celebrate and empower LGBTQIA plus youth. And on that note, we would like one of our student leaders, Hayden, to share the
leader at Wilco Iris and a transgender student. Knowing that last part about me, you can probably imagine how I felt hearing about Bill SB 0937, or what we've been calling the Pronouns Restriction Bill. This bill makes it a punishable offense for teachers to call and makes doing so liable for a civil action lawsuit. I hope a lot of us can agree that this bill is both awful and dangerous for students and teachers, but especially dangerous for trans kids. This bill being implemented or passed will effectively erase yet another safe space for students, and for some will erase the only safe space they have. Without safe spaces and places to express themselves, LGBTQ plus youth such as myself feel as though we are being erased from existence. But we are not being erased. It is not possible for anyone to erase us. LGBTQ people have always and will always exist, and I know that there will always be allies as well. There will always be people who care for one another, and with the constant erasure of safe spaces and attemptedly queer and trans people, it is more important than ever for members and allies of the LGBTQ plus community to stick together and support each other. It is so important to support each other. We are all people, though none of us are the same. So I ask that you consider the effects that your actions will have on actual, real people, with families and loved ones and dreams and aspirations. This is a scary time, so please reach out to a loved one. Never be afraid to need help, and remember that you are never alone. Because we are here, we are queer, and we aren't going anywhere, no matter what. Thank you.
you. Thank you all so much. In many cases, because youth can't be available during committee hearings, etc., it falls on the adults to speak, but when it's absolutely possible, we want to make sure youth have a voice in these events, and we're so grateful you took the time today. So everyone please, another hand. We also want to hear from our community's business voice. And I can't think of anyone better than Dr. Stephanie Mankey of the Tennessee Pride Chamber to represent that voice. And not only do we want to hear from her, we want to hear appreciatively, because they are such wonderful partners and do so much work to fight these bills. It would be unthinkable to pursue this without them. So I'm so glad they're here today. Steph.
Thanks, Chris. I can't top Hayden, but I'm going to try to follow up well. Good morning. I'm Dr. Stephanie Mankey. I'm the Executive Director of the Tennessee Pride Chamber of Commerce. I'm here representing LGBTQ plus inclusive businesses and professionals across Tennessee. Now, all of our members, they are everything from small business to corporations. They're across a diversity of industries, and they're also integral to Tennessee's economy. The Pride Chamber and some of its members, we're going to join our partner. This year, we're monitoring bills related, HB 64, as Councilmember Brenda was talking about, the segregation of transgender and gender-expansive individuals from accessing a number of vaguely defined spaces. Now, it should be enough. Listen, it should be enough that we recognize the humanity of our trans and gender-expansive individuals. But more specifically, we're also looking at the liability that these sorts of bills place on colleges and universities, program-adjacent venues, as well as private schools from state overreach. Now, not only do bills that focus on sex-segregated spaces impact access for LGBTQ plus pipeline and the current and next generation of our workforce, but they're also indirectly impact organizations and venues that must navigate legal compliance and liability. This is especially detrimental to small and mid-sized businesses who are less equipped to handle that. Now, even the ideological harm from these bills has material consequences. I must repeatedly address these proposed laws when I meet with tourism groups, at least once a month, conference planners, and businesses seeking to relocate to or host in Tennessee, but whose LGBTQ plus and allied in our state. Now, what we see at the Pride Chamber and what we hear from all of our business members is that equitable health care, public accommodations, and access to a good quality of life are inseparable from good business. They're inseparable from promoting economic growth and attracting and retaining our talent here. So we at the Pride Chamber, we're eager to discuss the potential impact of all of these bills and its impact on the business case. And we also thank all of our partner organizations here today who touched on all the various angles, and we just won't back down. We'll be here for our business community. Thank you so much.
Steph, thank you so much again for all that you and Joseph and everybody at the Tennessee Pride Chamber does. As we come to the last two speakers of the press conference, I'm going to take just a second to note a couple of things. We do have a bill list for the journalists and media folks in the room. Brian has that. We also have a policy brief on HB 64, which Bean is going to speak about here in just a second. But since our last two speakers are TEP regional chairs, I want to highlight just a second their work. First of all, although she's not on the docket to speak today, Julie Bisgard, our TEP Clarksville and Montgomery chair, is here. So Julie, thank you for being here again and the work you do in that area. I call her the legislative whisperer. She's really great in legislative meetings. I think she's the best, and I love working with her. We also have TEP Shelby County Chair and TEP Vice President Shahin Sami, who has been with us a number of years and is another expert at those legislative meetings. I'm highlighting these folks because it gets under my skin when anybody describes us as a Nashville organization. We are a statewide organization that strives very hard to cover as much of the state as we can. And we do it with real people who live throughout the state, and these people really tie our state network together. So I'm so grateful to them and thankful for their work. And now you're going to hear from two of them. The first is TEP Knox, Anderson, and Blount County's Chair, Bean Chapman, who has produced a stellar brief on HB 64 and is signed up to testify today. I don't know whether we've heard confirmation on that one way or the other yet, but Bean has signed up, and we are now going to hear from Bean on that brief and anything else they would like to tell us today.
As an academic and researcher, this is a very comfortable space for me. I'm ready. So those of you that know me know I'm not one to sugarcoat anything, and I will not do that today. First, I want to tell you that I stood on the steps of the Supreme Court in December with Sully and listened to members of the Tennessee legislature brag about being first in the nation for anti-LGBTQ legislation, hoping it spreads to all 50 states, and I cried. It was hard, as they had just begged the court to please permit them to continue to discriminate our transgender children. And for the last 9 years, as an advocate, I've watched the attacks on the community, especially children, in healthcare, schools, sports, libraries, all of the things you've heard mentioned so far. But I want to be clear, their expulsion from humanity causes real and tangible harm, as people have mentioned. Recent research has shown these laws have caused a 72% increase in suicide attempts in trans and non-binary youth. That is not minor. As a 5-alarm fire. It's dangerous rhetoric and hate speech. And the speed that these bills sail through committees and make it to the governor's desk for a signature make our work even harder but worthier. Cheerleaders for these laws proudly and performatively dehumanize real people, especially children, by reducing them down to their genitals. That word makes people uncomfortable for a reason. And it's disgusting to me that adults in power spend so much time thinking about, talking about, studying, and legislating over flesh. These laws are based on an unsophisticated understanding of the normal diversity and human biology, and the reductionist attempts to conveniently categorize real people into one box, either one or the other, is both wrong and dangerous. And as a reminder, we're talking about a very, very, very small number of children in this state. So today we have, everybody has commented on HB 64. It's an ideological ban bill. We already had one passed in 2021 that applies to public schools. This one, as people have mentioned, applies to private institutions that have residential programs. That includes not only private schools, it includes all of higher education, public and private, special public schools. Think of Tennessee School for the Deaf, other special programming, Tennessee Governor's School, that would impact campuses, and churches, nonprofits, and businesses. And this is unique, unlike the existing Tennessee bathroom ban, this one does not permit single-use bathrooms. And unlike every other bathroom ban across the nation, this one does not permit any exceptions for people with special needs or disabilities who are protected by federal law against discrimination. It's a big, big deal. So I want everybody to understand that this is not only an additional ideological government overreach. I will say I was both a public and a private school parent. If I can tell you anything about the private school world, is not having government involvement in that is paramount to people who are in private schools. They have no interest in the government having anything to do with what they're supposed to do. So here's the homework. I've always got homework for everybody. This is HB 64. I've marked it up. And in that process, this is the policy brief that we're referring to, that everybody's going to get a copy, or most people can get a copy at media.
It's going to be online. The media folks will get a copy today. We have hard copies for them. So
Okay, sorry for that.
And the district captains got it in their packet.
Okay, so you'll eventually be able to see it. It's really exciting. I love it. But if you visit our website, this will be on there, as well as research reports that we've done. I'm a researcher. I'm an analyst. This is my comfort zone. I love it. We've done a lot of really, I believe, good work across the state. I'm proud of what we have done for 20 years.
I keep asking you all to do it, so I mean.
We can't opt out of this. And so I want you to go to the website, look at the special reports, look at the policy brief, take the time to learn and be curious. Be willing to listen and to learn and be willing to be wrong and be willing to accept that you're wrong and learn. That's really, really important. Make time for phone calls to your people, with your legislators, spread the word. And then I can tell you, without our efforts, this situation, it would be even more dire in our community. And as someone who really thrives with challenges and almost unwinnable battles, we've talked about this, that's motivating for me, and I have to remember that's not motivating for everybody else. So to end on that, we do have a lot of successes. And without the work that's been happening for 20 years here with these people, we would be in a much worse place. Many, many dozens of bills would have passed by now. And so we need everybody's help on that. And one last thing, as I was standing there at the Supreme Court and I was listening to everything being said, and I heard what I'm going to call the anti-trans caucus, who was standing on the steps, talking about protecting children. We need to remind them they are morally and legally compelled to protect all children. That includes trans children and gay children, black and brown children, immigrant children. They need to be reminded of it. That is our job. Our job and our duty is to remind our government that that is their responsibility. So, thank you.
Did forget to mention the man who brought us all together, and that is TEP Nashville co-chair Brian Sullivan. So thank you for your work today as well. Brian is anywhere and everywhere for the cause, and he is the energy of this organization. So we're so grateful for his support. To bring us home today, we have TEP Hamilton and Bradley County's chair, Marcus Ellsworth, a friend of mine for many years, a great advocate for our community in Southeast Tennessee, but for the entire state. Marcus, we are so glad to have you here today.
Thank you, Chris. So we've heard a lot about all the things going wrong in our state legislature today, right? We've heard about the attacks on trans kids. We've heard about threats to gay marriage and all kinds of other things. And to make your voices heard, to talk to your representatives and let them know that we don't live in a Tennessee that's okay with discrimination. We don't live in a Tennessee that's okay with trans kids being abandoned and being left to fend for themselves and being told that they don't matter. We don't live in that Tennessee. I've lived in this state most of my life, and I love Tennessee because the Tennessee I know is one where people care about their neighbors. It's where they take care of each other, where they do anything. They go above and beyond, even without you asking, simply because they see you need something and they do it. That's why they call us the volunteer state, y'all. So, with that belief, I know we can push back against all this legislation. I know we can make a difference. In the long haul, we will win because we've already had plenty of wins. We know this works. So, yes, call your legislators, email them, show up for meetings, but also talk to your friends and neighbors about it. Let them know how these things affect you. Let them know how this affects them. Because I've even learned that some LGBT people in our state don't fully realize what's at stake right now. So the more we talk about it, the more we raise attention to it, the more we let those who we have elected to represent us know that they must represent all of us and do what is right for all Tennesseans, then I know we can win.
Yes, sir. All right. At this point, Brian, do we have just a few minutes for questions from the journalists? Okay. Any of the media folks want to ask a question to any particular speaker? Yes, Justin. Justin was up first. So, Stephanie.
You mentioned that you have conversations with people thinking about bringing conventions here. Are you aware?
We can't hear you.
Well, she can repeat the question, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you aware of any conventions that chose not to come to Tennessee because of these laws?
Yes, 100%. He's asking, am I aware of any conventions that I've talked to who were worried about bringing their constituents here? Definitely, yeah, and I've been working with NCVC and other tourism groups just to make sure that they have all the information they need to navigate Tennessee, but I'm going to be honest, it's getting harder as these bills are coming out to give that sort of information, and certainly we're losing.
For Hayden,
Yeah.
I'm just curious, what has been your journey like going through school as a transgender student?
So I've been out as a transgender as a transgender man for about 5 years now. Going through school has definitely been pretty tough. I've heard a lot of awful things in the hallways. Teachers have 100% looked at me differently. It's definitely been a difficult journey through school, but I'm hoping it can get better.
Well, just to follow up on that, I'm curious, with this sort of legislation that's going on, how does that impact you going to school? Does it make you even more fearful to even go to school or to be around your teachers and fellow classmates?
100%. The legislature terrifies me, which is absolutely why we have to speak out on it. Going to school, there have been a couple times where I've had to stay home from just fear of legislature.
And just, would you have any message for maybe other transgender students that are currently in your same position?
I know it can be really, scary, obviously, and difficult to be yourself, but I definitely think it is important to express yourself, especially now. And always find people who will accept you for you.
Thank you.
What we're going to do is take a second to get the pronouns of the speakers. I'll go ahead and start. I didn't say much that was very memorable, but in case you did quote me, he, him for Chris Sanders. Steph?
She, her.
Olivia?
She, her.
Russ is gone, but he, him. Brenda?
She, her.
Okay. If you all would go.
She, her. He, him.
Okay. And Beam?
They, them.
And Marcus?
They, he.
Okay. All right. So we did that. That got everybody, I think. Okay, good. Good point, Brian. If you haven't already received it, if your media person, Brian, has a copy of a bill list, it is not exhaustive, but it is a list that will give you a strong sampling of the kind of bills we're facing, and also a copy of the report that Bean authored. Do we have any final question from our media folks? If not, anything? Okay. Then we are going to switch to group logistic questions. I want to remind everyone that fairly soon, if not already, in 6B, there is a box lunch available for you free of charge. For the folks who you run into who come here later, feel free to steer them up there. It will not be available after 1:30.